All right, we are back. A win so nice, we thought we'd talk about it thrice. We've been with you Sunday, Monday, now Tuesday. We called last night's edition of Seminole Sidelines a 2-minute offense, although it felt more like a 4-minute offense by the time we got through. So we're calling this the overtime edition of FSU versus LSU after the Osceola's second watch of the game. And, of course, my name is Pat Burnham. I'll be the host tonight and joined by Osceola editor Bob Ferrante, Osceola senior writer Curt Weiler, and our resident football coach, Mark Salva, who obviously for most of you guys that are watching know that Mark was the starting offensive center and guard here for 3 seasons and then went on to be a graduate assistant coach at Florida State on the 1993 national championship team and then was the offensive line coach at South Carolina for 5 seasons. And, of course, we are glad to have Mark back as always for, what is this, the 5th season, Mark, that you've joined us? 4th season?
Who's counting?
So
the best season. We can agree with that, right?
Those first couple of seasons were pretty long, so some of those count as 2.
Dreadful seasons is what those first couple of seasons. Go ahead, Bob.
Hey, 5th season, but first byline on the Osceola.com with this second watch that I think we've had more than 3,000 views on Mark's analysis. So it's a nice job by Mark Salva on that first byline.
Yeah, and we do want to thank Mark because he went above and beyond. He literally broke down just about every single play of the game, which is a little bit more than we even thought we were going to get from Mark. So
old habits die hard.
We do want to thank Mark for that because obviously Mark does this out of the goodness of his heart, his love for Florida State and love for football and coaching. So we want to thank Mark for that because obviously as we started coming back from Orlando, we had to jump right into Southern Miss week and football practice. So we did not get to watch as much of the game as we wanted to rewatch, but we certainly did. But, Mark, just let's before we get started, I do want to remind our viewers and listeners who are not subscribers to the Osceola that we do have a special running right now. You can subscribe to the Osceola Rival site for $45.24. Those numbers should be familiar to you. We saw them at the end of the game on Sunday, but that is for new subscribers for 1 year. It runs through the 8th of this month, and you can use promo code FSU4524 on the subscription page to get your annual subscription rate of $45.24. You can go to the Osceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com, but we wanted to make sure that you are aware of that special and want our those of you who have not subscribed to the Osceola but listen to our podcasts and watch our YouTube shows. We'd love to have you join us and see everything that we do. And we pumped it up pretty good last night, so I will spare you my sales pitch and just hope that you will go to the site and take advantage of that offer. All right, Mark, you have Kirk and Bob and I have talked extensively about this last night without the benefit of a rewatch, but you have rewatched the whole game in detail. What were a couple of things that may have stood out to you differently than when we did first impressions coming out of the game on Sunday night?
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing I want to emphasize is that LSU is a good football team. That's probably the best quarterback we're going to see all year. That's on our schedule. Let me say that. You
might want to go
Riley Leonard looked pretty good yesterday. I saw the highlights of that one, but yes, but honestly, but in terms of the skill on that football team, those guys were fast. I mean, I remember sitting up where I was sitting watching the game live, just watching that defense. Those jokers can run, and so the fact that we kind of struggled a little bit early, especially running the ball. There's no surprise. Obviously, they had all summer to work on us and have a plan, and they had a really good plan, going in for sure. But then I think the adjustments we made, both offensively and defensively, just prove, and confirm what we already know is that we got a really good coaching staff. We have really good players. We have a good scheme and on both sides of the ball, and we're able to adjust, and we have answers for things that people throw at us because everybody's going to try to defend our strengths, which we have many, especially offensively. And, you got to pick something. You got to try to defend something, take away something. But when you do typically you give up something, and that's exactly what happened. And the thing they chose to give up was, unfortunately for them, Keon Coleman on isolated coverage on a sub 6 foot corner, and that proved to be a tough matchup for them that we were able to take advantage of. So moving forward, obviously, we're going to be able to, like I said, we have answers, and that to me really stuck out.
Well, let me ask you this. We talked about it a little bit before the season, and you've now seen this offense at full speed in a game. If you're a defensive coordinator, is there any specific issues that you see for a defensive coordinator? How, if you were a defensive coordinator, do you go about trying to defend this team without allowing mismatches all over the place?
That's a great question, because I don't know what that answer is. If I was a defensive coordinator looking at Florida State and knowing what I know about what Mike likes to do, you got to try to make it one-dimensional and take away the run. I mean, everything kind of comes off, the running game comes off of certain actions off, either whether it be the counter or the zone. There's RPOs and all kinds of screens and boots that come off of the run action that we like to use. So if you take away the run, that might mitigate that some. But of course, when you do that, you're going to put your secondary at risk. So who has good enough coverage to be able to cover our receivers, in isolated situations? And, that's for each defensive coordinator to determine if they want to take that risk. I mean, the lowest percentage things you have are long throws down the field, down the sideline. But Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson kind of make that. You only have to hit on a couple of those, right? Especially when you start getting down into the red zone. And so that's a risk that, if you're willing to take, those are the lowest percentage plays that you can probably give up. But if I was a defense coordinator, what I wouldn't want to do is to bleed slowly and just let Trey Benson and Lawrence Toafili and Jordan Travis just go down the field, 5, 6, 7 yards at a time. That's even worse to me, So I don't know what you do to defend this offense. There's just so many weapons. And then not to mention, you got Jaheim Bell, you've got Kyle Morlock, heck, I mean, it's just any number of things. I don't know how you defend it. I really don't.
All right, well, let me ask you, you talked about the run game, and that's one thing they had a hard time getting started on Sunday night. What did you see that changed for Florida State in the second half that allowed them to have a little bit of success? They ran for 104 minus the kneel down yardage at the end. I think they ended with 96. They lost about 9 yards on that last drive, just kneeling the ball down. But what adjustments did you see? Obviously, they started having success with the counter in the second half, which of course we love watching them run that as former offensive linemen. But did you see anything specific?
Yeah, and I talked about this on the second watch thread. Early in the game, we were in spread formations, whether it be, one back, one tight end, 3 receivers. And we were running the counter basically where you pulled the guard and you pulled the tackle as the second puller to turn up into the hole. And, as a defense, you can defend it basically one of two ways. You can either, on the first puller, you can either, what they call box it, where you try to, turn everything to the inside, or you can wrong shoulder the first puller and try to make everything spill to the outside. And when you do that, linebackers know they got to fit over the top of that, right? So making the play basically bounce to the outside. Well, that's what LSU chose to do. They chose to do that, make the play bounce to the outside, use the speed of their linebackers to come in, and then they were bringing a safety down to box it from the safety position. And that made everything, that just congested the whole thing. There wasn't a lot of room to run. Not only that, they used the quickness they had with their defensive tackles. When that guard pulled, he really reacted well and was shooting the gap. And it made it hard for Maurice Smith, because when that guard pulls, Maurice Smith is supposed to replace that puller and block that guy. Well, that guy was up the field so fast, it got Maurice in a lot of bad spots. And that's where you saw sometimes maybe, Trey getting hit in the backfield, or even, doing some play action from that look where you pulled a guard. It got Mo Smith in a really compromised position to block Wingo, and Wingo was obviously a force to be reckoned with, and that's what he was doing. So the adjustment that came out of the second half was that they ended up putting Jaheim Bell in the backfield, right? And they, instead of running the tackle as the second puller, they used the tight end wing as the second puller. So what that enabled two things that did. Number one, using Jaheim Bell as a lead blocker, he was able to block that safety that was coming down, forcing the play, because they were making it spill, bounce to the outside, and there was a safety waiting. Well, they had Jaheim Bell to block that safety. So when it spilled to the outside, you had a hat for that guy. That was number one. Number two, by using the tight end as the puller, that enabled the tackle to cover the B gap. It's a technique that, people that run this play, that's what they do. It's called a gate technique, where the tackle steps into the B gap, just punches the B gap. It holds up that 3 technique or 2 technique real quick, gives center time to cover him up, and then the tackle wheels back on any outside pressure coming from the opposite side. And so, in other words, you squeeze the middle, you blunted with the second back, and that's when you saw Cedric making some big plays. Lawrence made some big plays. Hill made some big plays. And that quarterback draw that got the first down with Travis, the quarterback counter, it was basically the same scheme. And that cleaned it up, and that enabled us to control the ball in the second half, fourth quarter, and had great success running the ball. So that's just a great example of, they had a great plan, and it worked. And when we saw it, we had a way to answer that question. We answered the question. And that's the thing about this offense. And you can apply that to any number of things that we like to do that we have answers for. That's a little technical, and it's a little, it's a very granular, but I think it's a great example of what I'm talking about when I say our coaching staff really knows what the heck they're doing.
We need to figure out a way to get you up on a board and let you do this for us and show us our fans exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
All right, Curt, you said you got a chance to rewatch most of the game, if not all of it. What were some of the things that stood out to you in your second watch, as opposed to obviously watching it with the naked eye on Sunday night?
Yeah, I got to watch the condensed game on YouTube. That's all I had time for today. With everything else, I didn't it had most of the plays in there, though. I mean, you really do have appreciation for, especially, as things started to snowball in the second half, what Florida State did at the line of scrimmage, really on both sides of the line of scrimmage, against what we think is a really good LSU offensive line and a LSU defensive line that was missing their top guy, but still has a lot of talent. I'm interested, Mark. Do you think the impression, especially on the rewatch, it felt like Florida State was pass blocking better than their run blocking, especially in the first half? Do you think was LSU selling out to stop the run, or was that something? Do you think that's a market improvement? Because that kind of is a reversal of what their strength was last season. Yeah,
no, I think when we went straight drop back without any kind of play action pullers trying to do some rush, but when it was straight drop back, when they just rushed 4, they did an incredible job. There's one time where Byers got beat, right off the bat. And so there was that one time, but that was really about it. The rest of the time, when they brought pressure with just 4, it was really, really solid, and that was impressive to me. And I don't think it was anything that they did or didn't do. I think it was just us really doing a good job.
See, LSU didn't have any sacks last year either. It felt like last year LSU didn't have sacks. I think the offensive line did a pretty good job, but there were definitely a few Jordan escapism moments. There weren't a ton of those last night. They were spying him with Perkins. Jordan didn't beat them a ton with his legs. He also didn't have to escape a ton because I thought, time and time again, he had clean pockets for about as long as he needed them. And that was, from where we were, it was pretty remarkable to see that. It puts in perspective. You don't always notice live how quickly that game snowballed. Where I'm watching the clock, and I think it's 17-17 with like 6.5 minutes left in the third quarter, and LSU's across midfield trying to drive to take the lead back. Less than a full quarter later, it was 38-17, and the game was. It is crazy how quickly it just seemed like LSU. I'm not going to go so far as to accuse them of quitting, but Florida State definitely imposed its will. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to finish up first.
Well, I was going to something else. If you have something to say on that.
I was just going to say, since Mark, you've watched it. We talked about the fact that we thought they might have turned it off on Sunday night in first impressions. What did second watch show you? I mean, at Florida State, just what's your saying that you love about you got the saying about taking the will away from another person?
It's your job to impose your will on theirs and make them quit, right? So
they capitulate.
Capitulate. Yeah, they capitulated. No, hey, let me tell you something. Curt is exactly right. I thought in my mind, being down 3 going into the half, and that was a cheap field goal, by the way, that run anyways, but being down 3 and then going back and getting the ball and tying the game, that next defensive series to me was the key to the game, because you knew that if we stopped them there, that we were going to take the lead. I just knew deep in my soul that if we stopped them right there, that we were going to take the lead, and then we had the advantage. Because at that point I'm like, I don't know that they can stop us now. And when we got that stop and went and took the lead, I said, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, we're in really good shape right now. And Curt's right; it snowballed from there. And I think they knew it too. To Curt's point, I think they knew it too, because you can just get a feel when a play caller is hot and is seeing it, and then Jordan was seeing it, because I said that on first impressions, that early in the game, I don't think Jordan was seeing it real clearly, and I don't think that even Mike as a play caller was quite in a rhythm and understand where the opportunities were. But in the second half, it was very clear that we knew exactly what we needed to do, wanted to do, and that we were able to execute. And and I think they knew it too, because you looked at the body language, they were spinning. I mean, we'd run the ball, then we run a play action, then we do a screen, then we throw it downfield for a bomb. We're getting chunk plays, we're doing this, and you could just see their heads spinning, like, what the heck is going on? They had no clue. And I thought it was a beautiful thing. They capitulated, no question.
Yeah, I thought one guy, and this is kind of jumping all over the place, but I thought one of the more interesting comments that Mike made today after practice about last week's preparation, and we had talked a little bit about it as a staff. I don't know if we talked about it on a Seminole Sidelines, but we had seen, we felt like maybe they were not as sharp in the second half of camp as they were the first half of camp. And Mike made the comment after practice that there was a reason they struggled in the first half, is because he felt like they did not have a very good practice last Wednesday and they played like it. And I don't know what his exact wording was, but he did make that comment today. And so I think we'll talk about the intensity of today's practice a little bit later. But I do think that I think it validated what we saw heading into the game. But obviously, I think I asked you this Sunday night without the benefit of a second watch, but was there any difference in the level of intensity by the team going into the second half? Obviously, Jordan got on track, was perfect, flawless. Even his incomplete was a purposely thrown ball. He threw it where he had to throw it. But was it more intensity in the second half, or was it just a team that needed about 25 minutes to settle down, because they did score going into the half to bring it back to, well, I think it was LSU. I don't
think it was necessarily intensity. I think it was confidence. I think they came out at the half understanding exactly what they're getting ready to do. I think there was a lot of confidence, and that's kind of the feel I have, because it was an intense game in the beginning. It was a slugfest. It was feeling each other out. It was, that first goal line stand was incredible. That was, stuff in the run, and then they go to the 3 straight passes, and Renardo is in the hip pocket of the receiver. Daniels throws a terrible ball, but, that's too bad, so sad, but Renardo was there, and then throw in the back of the end zone, and then pressuring him on fourth down. that was an incredible series. And I think, that was an intense time of the game. And that whole first half was just, you could just feel it was just teetering, like who was going to take control of this game? So there was some intensity. There was a lot of pressure in that point. But I think when we came out the second half, there was a lot of confidence. There was an element of we got this. We took their best shot, and we're in a good position here. I think they felt, I think on both sides of the ball. And look, we hadn't even talked about the defense yet.
Well, I was
And-
writing my notes down to come back and talk to you about
Yeah,
the defense.
man.
But before we do,
Go ahead.
I just want to ask Bob. Bob, obviously you got a chance to watch some of the rewatch, but just what were some of your takeaways after finally getting the chance to view it for a second time?
I thought Lawrence Toafili was maybe an under the radar guy when you look back at Sunday. I mean, he wasn't the star, but he made a lot of things really, really work. That big, 4th and 2 pass, the catch and run that he had down on the goal line. Then the RPO where Travis, was thinking, is it going to go to LT? But then Travis keeps it for the touchdown. I thought LT had a really nice game, all things considered. Winston Wright, first catch we talked about. It's important to get Winston Wright out there. It was an important moment. He had a catch. He had a big block on one of the touchdowns. That was big. We always talk about situations too. And I think we have hit on this a little bit, but of your main situations, red zone, LSU was not very good, right? With the 4th down stops. 3rd down, LSU 3 of 10. FSU was 9 of 14. 4th down, the 3 stops Florida State had. Seminoles were, of course, the 1-on-1 on that LT catch and run. So when you play well in situations, I know we've talked about this a lot. Mike Norvell emphasizes the situations like a lot of coaches do, but we saw a team that was really, really good in those big moment situations.
Yeah. All right. So let's slide over to the defense because
Hey, can I talk about one thing real quick? I want to talk about that Lawrence Toafili play because it was 4th down, just teetering on the edge of the red zone. And, I think that speaks to our culture tremendously because here's the deal. And I saw it getting ready to happen. We're in trips, 3 receivers to one side, 1 receiver to the other side, Toafili in the backfield. You saw the blitz lining up. You saw the guys creeping. You saw the safety shift over. And I'm sitting there looking at it going, oh, my gosh, they don't have enough guys to cover on the 3 receiver side. And sure enough, when the ball was snapped and they brought the heat, Winston Wright was uncovered. He was totally uncovered. I'm like, Jordan, throw it there. But Jordan saw something else. He knew that if he – no, I'm sorry. I'm confusing plays here. Bottom line is, the blitz was coming. Jordan knew that this was he didn't check out of it. That's what it was. He didn't check out of it. He knew that if he could just get the ball to Lawrence, this was the perfect play call against the perfect front because nobody was going to cover Lawrence because the blitzer was coming from where Lawrence was coming from. So when he crossed the formation and slipped out to the other side, if Jordan just kept his cool, delivered a good ball, which he did, you see him lose a little bit of ground to create some separation between the unblocked blitzer and to give Lawrence a chance to get out, and he just kind of dumped the ball real softly right in front of him where he could catch it and turn and run. And then Lawrence did what he does, right? Dodging guys. But I think the thing that really was the best part of it was Johnny Wilson, who was on the opposite side, was dragging across, turns it to another gear to get in front of Lawrence and block 2 guys. And Jaheim Bell hustling to block a couple of guys where he almost got in the end zone. And I think that just, to me, that just kind of encapsulates Jordan understanding what it is. What's getting ready to happen, calmly delivering the ball, executing the play, everybody doing their job, and a little extra effort to almost put the ball in the end zone. And then we did the very next play. To me, I love that play.
Did LSU's blitzes feel a little predictable to you, Mark? Watching back especially, it seemed like you could often tell where the pressure was coming from and that they weren't very deceptive with it.
Yeah, no, they weren't very well disguised. In fact, the interception that Jordan threw right after we had the muff punt, it was a pretty similar blitz, and you could see it coming. And he had a good play, but the problem was Dustin Hill was playing the slot receiver, and when he threw that screen, and he missed the block.
Yeah,
and so that enabled the guy to intercept the ball from Keon. But there was that one. There was another situation where they were getting ready to blitz, and they loaded the box. Where when we were trying to grind the clock and run the ball and be more physical and commit to the run, where Jordan was under center, he saw the look, and it was a look where, you know what, I could check out of this and make an easy throw. And I saw him do it. He looked at the sidelines and he pumped his arms like this, like he was saying, do you want me to run it? And I don't think he was signaling the receiver. I think he was looking at Mike saying, do you still want me to run it? And so running a running play into a loaded box, that maybe not be the best look. And I want to believe Mike said, run the damn play anyways. We're gonna grind out 4 or 5 yards right here. We're sending a message, and that's exactly what happened.
Now he did make the comment today, and that they went into their 4-minute offense earlier than normal in his press conference today. So you're probably exactly right on that. And then
he talked about the new clock rules a little. He said he couldn't feel it live, but yeah, they got the ball back with 6 minutes in the first half and kicked off their 4-minute offense then, just because he knew there was going to lose a little extra time from what he was used to.
Yeah. All right,
Good
so
stuff.
I'm going to come back to. We had a nuanced conversation in the car about Mike Norvell and Brian Kelly. We'll come back to that towards the end because I do want to get your thoughts, everybody's thoughts on that. All right, so let's move over to defense quickly. We're as normal. We are running behind, which is we wish every game would be overtime because we do everything overtime. But all right, so the defense. Obviously, I think we all think the offense is probably better than what we thought it would be. And we all thought it was going to be really good, but I think we saw that Keon Coleman is what we thought he would be. The offensive line is better than we've seen in some time. They're deep at running back. Jordan Travis. I mean, he's a great player. I don't know what else to say. He's one of the most dynamic playmakers in college football. Played a perfect second half. But the questions going into the season are all in the defense, particularly at linebacker and in the secondary because of youth and depth at linebacker, not youth, but depth at linebacker, youthful depth at linebacker, then depth at safety in particular. My impressions were the linebackers played better than I thought they were. They're still their weaknesses against the pass, not that they played well against the run. We did see blown coverages, which we saw in camp, and which was my biggest concern. Going into the season, there were some blown coverages in the second half that didn't hurt them as far as the total outcome. But we saw 11 drop the pass on the sideline where either 23 or 20 decides to jump on the number 2 receiver, and he already had a safety over the top. Did not make much sense. But obviously with the defense, do you think they're better than we thought they were after watching the game? What are your concerns on the defensive side of the ball, and what do you think the potential of this defense is?
Well, let me say that I am pleasantly surprised at the level of play of the defensive line. I mean, Farmer to me is a different dude. He is so much better than this time last year, and of course, even late last year. That dude's gotten a lot better. He impacted that game tremendously. Braden Fisk, that dude is fast off the ball. He is disruptive. He's strong, and I know you guys have been telling me that all camp, but to see it live and in color, that's awesome. And Fabian played more than I thought he did. I guess the reason I didn't think he played that much because he didn't do much, and he didn't. He was the least impactful guy we had, and last year he was our best guy. Now I know he's not 100%, but and then Patrick Payton, he's going to drive you crazy sometimes because he likes to run around blocks, but he's so dang long and fast. His recovery and fast twitch is so good. It's kind of like Marvin Jones used to do. Marvin Jones used to dodge blocks, run around blocks, but he was so damn fast and ball hawking that it didn't matter, right? And so, yeah, the offensive line of LSU was supposed to be their strength, and if that's going to be if that's one of the best offensive lines we're going to play, I feel real good about the season because those guys, because we played a lot of light boxes. Especially the first half, we were in 2 safeties, which meant that we had light boxes, and we were playing a lot. We would walk down one of the linebackers on the open side edge, the side away from the tight end, to take away the quarterback, read option, and that left one linebacker in the box a lot of times with 2 safeties, and that's where the quarterback draws were hurting us a little bit. Because they would do it and they go trips to one side and that would displace Deloach and so he'd kind of be out of position on some of those quarterback draws. But but playing the run in a light box like that and making holding them to 4 yards or even less on some of their their design runs, I thought was really, really good. And even in the pass rush, it wasn't, we didn't harass them a whole lot. We got to them, at most times in the game, a lot of times in the game, but even in a 4-man rush, it was still pretty good pressure, and I can't say enough about the defensive line. That to me was the biggest thing for me. in terms
You know,
of.
I don't exaggerate. You know, I wouldn't lie. I wouldn't lead you down the wrong direction, Mark. I told you
Yeah.
Brady Smith was going to be good. I wouldn't lie about that.
I know, but you know, there's relative.
You got to see with your own eyes, right? I get it.
Yeah, it's all relative, but he makes us so much better for sure.
By the way, Murphy's trying to make a guest appearance on the show right now.
Good for Murph. And if I don't know, and I don't know where this stands, but if Daryl Jackson could join that group, that would just make us all the most better.
That would be something else. All right, so what are you concerned about on defense coming out of this game, or do you feel better? Maybe more. Do you feel better about linebacker and secondary than you did at the end of the season?
Yeah, I mean, you know, look, the linebackers are going to get better covered. The more they do it, the more they see it, it'll get better. The things that kind of hurt us in the underneath coverage. I think those are correctable things, right? Now they see it. We know what our warts are. Those are things that can be worked on and get better at. You know, the secondary, I thought, you know, for the most part, we were tight on guys. You know, now they had some drops, you know, but I thought we were a lot tighter on guys, especially when it counted. Our man coverage was much better. Our zones coverage, well, you know, we're, you know, keeping everything in front of us, which is kind of what we like to do. And I'm fine with that. You know, I think later in the game, we went to more, because of the lack of downfield threat. We went to a lot more singles, high safety, but we were take one of those safeties and drop what I call robber coverage, where he kind of in the middle looking for the quarterback draw, but also looking for crossers, because that's basically where they were hurting us, on slants and crossers. And so he's sitting there, you know, playing those routes. And we went to that a great majority of the second half, you know, midway through the third quarter on, which I thought was a nice little adjustment. And that's because of the lack of the ability for them to throw the ball down the field. So, yeah, I feel for that game, you know, it looked like we adjusted well and had a real – I feel fine with the defense.
All right. Bob and Curt, y'all spend a whole lot more time than I do watching the secondary guys. I do watch them enough to have an opinion, and I'd go back there and watch them do 7-on-7 some and stand back in the end zone. But you guys kind of let me go watch the offensive and defensive lines, and you guys take the skill guys. But what were your concerns about the back seven going into the season, and what did you think after watching the LSU game?
I guess my big concerns were depth at linebacker and safety, but also what would tackling look like in week one? Because we saw a lot of games Saturday, you know, the luxury of covering a Sunday games that you watch all the Saturday games. And on Saturday, we saw some not so great tackling, you know, for example, Colorado, TCU, a bunch of those other games. I think how much of that is just inherent to week one? It's got to get better. It should get better. But these are also, you know, a lot of younger guys. Just guys don't have a ton of experience yet. I mean, Shaheem Brown made a great play on that fourth down stop, but he's still gaining experience. And that's even a guy who has a lot of experience at safety. So it's going to take a little bit more time. But I think the best thing about this defense, honestly, is the offense is scoring a ton of points, and that's going to mask a lot of your defensive deficiencies, if you want to call it that, just because you're going to win shootouts, man. I mean, you're just going to win shootouts with this team.
You don't need a top 10 defense if you have a top 3 or 5 offense in the country. Like, yeah, that would just be, I mean, embarrassment of riches. Yeah, I mean, I thought, frankly, I mean, I know the numbers are what they are. I know that last pass from Malik put him over 300 yards, but that was, I mean, how many freshmen on the field? I know freshmen were involved in the play and kind of let the play happen. Then Quindarius Jones fell down, which really hurt. But honestly, I mean, I think we heard a lot about Malik Neighbors relative to the other two guys, as all 3 guys who could be kind of top 1 or 2 round picks. And I mean, Malik got his to a degree. He had 6 catches for 67 yards, but looking at, I mean, his longest catch was 21. I thought Renardo Green was on him a lot, and Renardo Green also got a pick when coverage again on the play where he slipped. I thought Renardo, I mean, it was just the next step for him after he really finally looked like I think the player Florida State thought he could be last year, sticking at cornerback, staying at corner again. Fentrell, I didn't dive into it a ton. I thought he made some plays, maybe also maybe allowed a bit too much, but I mean, there's maybe some game one-iness to that. Jarian Jones, I thought Pat, I know you were fuming a little at
Missed
that tackle early. But he did have a tackle in a big spot later to kind of redeem himself a bit. A similar open field tackle. He redeemed himself a little later.
Yep.
No, but the only thing I know about tackling is you can't tackle if you're on the ground. That's all I know. Anyway, we know there are going to be problems with tackling, but yeah, I agree with. I thought the team as a whole was better than I thought it was. My questions on defense were, I don't have as many. I do think the defense has plenty of potential to get better during the season, and Mike continuously talks about continued player development, and I think we'll see that.
Yeah, 100%.
The question really about the defense is, do you just have to hope they stay healthy? Because they do get some. We talked about this awareness at a few spots if injuries happen, but Mike did say they came out of the LSU game pretty good. So that's 1 down, 11 to go.
Yep. All right, so we're going to put LSU to bed finally. Florida State football team did it about midway, right at about the start of the fourth quarter on Sunday. It's taken us a little bit longer as we don't have to move on quite as quickly as they do. But obviously, guys, we had a lot of thoughts going into the season. Now we've seen a full weekend of college football, including FSU's first game. I think we've already answered this. FSU is better than what you thought they were heading into the LSU game. I'm assuming that we're all fact there, right?
Yes.
All right. So what we learned today was that FSU is now ranked 4th in the AP poll and 5th in the coaches poll after beating then 5th ranked LSU. I know polls don't. My personal opinion is the week 1 polls don't mean much, particularly when your goal is to win a conference championship, which puts you in play for college football. So the polls are kind of irregardless at this point. But we do have opinions, right? And do you think Florida State should be ranked higher than number 4 in either poll? My argument was they played a tougher opponent than Bama. Bama's got a new quarterback. Florida State has Jordan Travis. I think Florida State should be ranked 3rd. So I think that's where I would have put them. Where would you guys have put them?
I think Florida State will be 3rd after this week if Bama loses to Texas. And I think if Bama beats Texas, then they would have kept them at 3 anyways. They would have moved, even if they moved Florida State to 3 next week, the Bama might have moved right back to 3
and
next
that's
week.
Fine. That's what.
So, yeah. I mean, I'm fine with it.
But where will you have put them? You're like Jerry. You dodged my questions.
I think they're fine where they are.
All right, so you would have put them at 4. Yeah. That's fine. Bob, where will you put them?
Yeah, I think we were talking about this a little bit, yesterday. I think 4 or 5 is about where I expected Florida State to be. I like if a voter is thinking after 1 week, these are my 4 playoff teams through 1 week, then yeah, you're putting Florida State in the playoff, which I think is a cool conversation for that voter. Overall, to Pat, to your point, the polls matter maybe around mid-October, because then you're really setting a tone for the college football playoff voter, who's then saying, okay, what do the coaches think? What does the national media think? Then how am I watching what game from about mid-October on, as far as then formulating, okay, what's my 4, and then from there.
All right. Mark?
And I haven't watched everybody. I haven't watched Michigan.
And neither has anybody that voted.
Right. I haven't watched Georgia. OSU. I mean, I didn't get a chance to watch many games. The Spectrum thing down here in Central Florida is not very good. Anyway.
Tell us about it. We were down there for 3 days.
I know. So here's what I do know. I wouldn't trade our quarterback for any other quarterback. I don't know who UGA's quarterback is. I've never seen him play. I don't know who Michigan's quarterback is. Bama, I don't know that Bama knows who their quarterback is, right? And so, in this era of college football, that is supremely important. And, with all that being said, I'd probably put us 3 or 4.
Okay.
Is kind of how I feel, maybe even 3, just because of the guy that we got. I think he's the difference maker. I think he's the guy to win it. You got to have a dynamic playmaker there, and he has all the toys to play with at his disposal. I don't think anybody else has that. I know Georgia has, Bowers, and I'm sure they have a guy. I know OSU has, they have a pretty good receiver room too. USC has the former, the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. Those guys are going to be pretty good too. But who has the defense to go with it? Well, Georgia probably does. Bama, is going to be solid, just raw top to bottom roster. But do they have the quarterback to make the difference? That's going to be the question for Alabama. And so, yeah, I mean, it'll all come out in the wash. 4 gets us into the playoffs.
Well, I'm just talking about the week 3 poll. I'm not talking week 2 poll. That's all. I know. It's a week-to-week thing. All right, fact or fiction? FSU is now the prohibited favorite to win the ACC after beating LSU and with Clemson's loss to Duke.
No question.
Raw facts there. Okay.
Yeah.
This is. I got to get one of you guys to agree with me on this next fact or fiction question, and you may after this last game or the first game of the year. Fact or fiction? Keon Coleman will have 1,000 yards receiving. Somebody jump on this train with me before it leaves town.
Okay, I'll go fact only because you'll get 13 games plus a bowl. I mean, if we're talking 14 games, he's getting 1,000.
Here's what I'll say. It may come down to if Florida State's playing in a bowl that Keon Coleman is motivated to play in. Because if they're not in the playoff, I'm not sure Keon Coleman's playing in a bowl game.
Unless it's an Orange Bowl type thing. Possibly.
Maybe. That's the
against Michigan State or LSU again.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. For the reasons Bob said, I think heck, I wouldn't be surprised if he has a 200-yard game in him here, maybe 1 or 2. I mean, looks like Duke could be a shootout.
All right. Speaking of Duke. Hold on, my computer's not working for me. Fact or fiction? Duke is the best ACC team in the Carolinas.
I'm saying North Carolina until proven otherwise.
All right. Fiction for Curt?
Yeah, I'll go fiction. I'll stay with North Carolina for now. I think from everything I can tell, it looks like Clemson thought they're going to roll their helmet out there and win the game. And that makes Clemson dangerous, in my opinion.
It was a weird game. I mean, it was 28-7, but like Clemson had 400 yards of offense. They fumbled twice inside the 5-yard line. Like it was not you look at the score and you're like, oh wow. And like it was a wow, but not in like they dominated them way. They were about even to them, which is scary for Clemson.
Yeah, for sure.
Fact or fiction? Clemson should have dropped out of the AP top 25 after losing to Duke, who was not the best team in the state of North Carolina or South Carolina, apparently.
How much you want to bet people submitted polls before that game last night because they didn't want to? I don't know when the deadline is, but I bet some people may have turned them in before that game.
Oddly, wasn't Clemson higher than Duke in the coaches poll, which is nonsensical to me?
Yes. Aren't they like 24 in the AP? Barely. I'll let them hang on to a 24 spot when Duke might be good.
To quote Dabo, I'm sure in his mind he probably thinks this. We play them 10 times, we beat them.
No.
Right.
All right. Here we go. For next one, fact or fiction. This is revisiting a question we asked before the season started. The rest of the FSU defense will have more sacks than Verse and Peyton combined. After the first game, team 4, Verse Peyton 0. I said team. I'm the only one that said team. Is anybody going to jump on that train?
I think those were 2 of the better offensive tackles they may play all year. And I think that's why a lot of the pressure and the sacks came from interior guys in that game. I'm still going to say fiction. Okay. But obviously the stats are what they are.
You going fiction?
I'll say fact.
All right, Bob.
I'm going to go fiction. I'm still rolling with Verse Peyton.
All right, so we're stuck at 2-2. I appreciate people joining my band on my train on these other things. All right, now we've had a little bit of fun at practice with this one because he's a lot of fun to watch punt. Fact or fiction? FSU will punt less than 30 times this season. They punted 34 times last season, really 35, but one was an attempted pass, apparently. Anyway,
they lined up and punt 35 times.
Yeah, they lined up and punt 35 times last year, punted 34. I am going under 30. Fact, they will punt less than 30 times.
I'm going to go slightly over only because you're going to use backups in a lot of these second halves, and you might just have some drives that just kind of stall out. You're not in a good spot to go for it on 4th down. We know Norvell loves that. But if you're in 4th and not manageable with a backup quarterback, 2's on the line, whatever. I can just see a few more punts, but not because the first team offense is really struggling, really.
I'm with Bob. That was my same reasoning I thought of.
Yeah, same.
Okay.
Same.
All right. All right.
You're by yourself on that one there, buddy.
I'll stay there. I'm good. I'm a man on an island. I'm used to it. Who will lead FSU in receptions this year? Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, or other? And right now it's 9 for Keon, 7 for Johnny.
It's hard not to say Keon. I mean, it's hard. I think he'll definitely lead him in touchdowns. He's got a great little head start there. I'll give him catches too.
All right.
Yeah, I think Johnny would if he wasn't like 66% on catches.
It should be 9-9.
Right. It should be 9-9, right? So, yeah, I'm going to say Keon.
All right.
Yeah,
so
yep.
Now we're going to move a little bit away from FSU. We'll come back with one last FSU fact or fiction. But we started the college football season with Florida laying an egg at Utah. Fact or fiction, Florida will get to a bowl this season. After just your opinion after week 1. We know they got a tough schedule, but based off what you saw against Utah and what you expected them coming into the season, do you think Florida will make a bowl at 0-1?
I say fiction because I think they're going to get boat raced at Tennessee in a couple of weeks, and I think it'll start to unravel.
That's a home game, so if they get boat race, that'd be even worse, actually.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I think I'm going fiction too. I think I'm going 5-7.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you guys. I'm just pulling up the schedule. I mean, the chances at wins: McNeese, Charlotte, Vanderbilt. You're at South Carolina, Arkansas, Missouri are in there. But this is a tough schedule for them, man. I mean, this is tough.
You've either got to pull a pretty big upset or you've got to win about all your coin toss games.
Yeah, I saw the Utah game. Probably, actually, the best game that night was the Minnesota-Nebraska game. So I kind of turned it because the Florida game was so bad. And I've said going into the season that somehow Billy Napier, who's now tagged as Billy Taggart, would figure out a way to get this team to the bowl. And a bowl this year, and I'm changing my mind. I'm not sure Florida can get to a bowl this year after what I saw week 1, and so I'm going to change. I'm going to reserve the right to change my mind about what I said before coming to this season, and I'm saying that Florida does not get to a bowl. I agree with you guys. It will not happen. All right, fact or fiction? This should have been the same question. Colorado will win more than 5 games this year, which gets it into a bowl. So, Mark, your teammate, Coach Sanders, whose nickname in college was Prime Time, but he is Coach Sanders. You think Coach Sanders gets his team into a bowl in 2023 after the upset of the history of college football out there against the defenseless TCU team?
You know what? I'm going to say they will. Those jokers played hard. They played hard, and I'm going to give him a lot of credit for that. You know, he brought in a bunch of guys, and I think they all kind of believe, and they played really hard. So yeah, I'll say they do. It's not a killer schedule.
That's what I was going to say. Is I mean, if they beat TCU, and TCU, I don't think should have been ranked. I think that was proven by that game. I think TCU, frankly, looked pretty bad and helped Colorado quite a bit. But you look at other games that I think Nebraska, I think they have a real shot at. Colorado State, they might beat badly. Arizona State, I think they'll win on the road. Arizona, I think they'll have a decent chance at home. Washington State on the road. Stanford at home. I think that's 7 right there. I think they can win 6 of those. I think I'm going facts.
All right.
I didn't expect to think that would happen because we talked about the offensive line and defensive line for them not being their strengths, right? But I thought Sean Lewis kind of masked their deficiencies up front with how he, built that offensive game plan. So if they can keep ahead, and the coaches now have film to really scout Colorado, but if they can keep evolving and staying with that kind of quick pass game, you can't run, but you can quick pass, and that's a tough offense to stop.
Yeah, well, listen, I think that they were much better than I thought they would be. I still don't know how much of that was just the awful TCU defense. I'll give Sean Lewis credit. He called a really good game. They are better than I thought at the skill positions on offense. I don't think they're much better than TCU on defense. I think there's going to be I think they've still got some growing pains to go through this Nebraska defense they're going to face this week will be much better than the one they faced at TCU. They're not quite the black shirts yet, but Matt Rule's a hell of a coach, and I think that he'll show them some stuff they haven't seen. This team's I'm getting off point. It's not about this next week. I will reserve right to change my mind like I do every week on Takeaway Tuesday. But on this Tuesday, I'm saying no, they will not get to 6. They may have 5 wins, which would be unbelievable from where that program came from. And I all do credit to Dion and some of the things I've heard about how he runs his program. I've certainly it's kind of helped me understand why they are the way they are. I've heard he's doing some very old school things there. As far as accountability and things of that nature. So certainly caught my eye, but I still think there's some good coaches and good teams they're going to play against. So I'm going to say they could get to 5, but I don't see them getting to 6. All right, we'll move on to the next thing. One of my pet peeves in college football is Power 5 FBS teams playing FCS teams. We saw a tremendous amount of non-competitive games. There are health and safety concerns, 85 scholarships to 63, faster, bigger, stronger, more talented. We're going now moving closer and closer to super conferences. Coaches are getting paid millions of dollars. Players are getting paid millions of dollars. Is it time to move on from these dumbass games we're allowing our ADs and presidents and coaches to sign off on? And I'm not talking about Florida State. I'm talking about across college football. This is not a Florida State-centric question. Guys, it's time. I mean, this has turned into more professional football than it's ever been before. And Florida State fans are going to have to sit through North Alabama. Alabama fans through the Citadel. This next week, LSU's got to sit through a Grambling game. And these people are paying good money for their booster memberships to get tickets and parking spaces and whatever. So anyway, I think you know where I want you to vote on this.
It's fact for me, but I'll even say, I mean, if in the interim, if you're not going to immediately do away with them, don't put them in week 1. Like we had way too many. We had way too many on the same week. It made for, I mean, I was happy college football was back, but it made for a pretty tough Saturday with how many stinkers there were of just one team so much better than the other.
And you notice I put regular season games in the list.
No, play them in the spring. My thought on the matter.
Yep. And that's why you're the reason I put the regular season in there. So, all right, Bob, Mark.
I think we talked a little bit about this too on the trip. If you insist on playing FCS, make it a week 0 game at the very least. Make it preseason like. I know there's some debate. Do you count it toward your win-loss record? Do you not? I still argue television networks don't want to broadcast Power 5 versus FCS games. Fans do not want to pay to make those trips to those stadiums to watch those games. Those are 2 big reasons to do away with them.
As a coach, I don't mind it. It gives me a chance to play some younger guys. It gives me it's almost like a pseudo bye week, right? Especially
yes, exactly what the hell it is. It's a pseudo bye week.
I mean, but it also gives you a chance to play
some younger players. Week, take a bye week.
Yeah, but it's a little bit,
you can't bye weeks whenever. You got to get 6 wins.
Yeah, I mean, as the coach in me is like, I like it as a coach, as a fan and a supporter. Obviously, I don't like it. As a coach, I like it because it gives me a chance to play some guys, to try some things, to I remember one time we were playing one of these games like the week before Miami, and of course, we're practicing against
but
a 4-3.
You weren't getting paid, at least not above the table,
right? And so I'm ignoring that comment, and so we're practicing against a 4-3. We get in the game and they're running a totally different defense. We're like, what the heck is going on here? And we were practicing against Miami fronts the whole sticking week. They never said anything, right? And so we were getting ready for Miami, and we ended up playing something totally different, which it didn't matter what they ran. We were going to beat them anyways. So
all right. So Mark is all for beating up on the FCS
Yeah,
guys.
I am.
We're against it.
You're being philanthropist. You're supporting those schools by
I'm
giving them.
philanthropic. That's right.
He's either that or he's a bully. We don't know which of the two it is. Right
Both.
You're paying them to bully them.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
They serve their purpose.
You are literally paying to beat them up.
They serve their purpose.
All right. So we have enjoyed the LSU win now for going on our third day. But I've always said Mike Norvell does not strike me as the kind of guy that lets complacently sit in, not for a day, not for a minute, and maybe not even for a second. I think they had a joyous flight home. I think he let them enjoy Monday. But I'm going to tell you what, boys, they got after it today. Fact or fiction, today's practice was one of the most intense we have seen, and I'm going to just say recent weeks, 2 weeks. And, of course, we don't get to see scrimmages, and we see 2 practices a week in season. But to me, this is one of the more intense practices. Now, I did not see last Wednesday's practice, which Mike referenced. I saw Tuesday. No, we didn't see Wednesday. We saw Tuesday, Thursday.
We saw Tuesday, Thursday.
Yeah, and he referenced the bad Wednesday practice.
Yeah.
But this, to me, was one of the more intense practices we have seen. Not only from Mike, but there were some other coaches that were getting after it pretty hard, and it would have been there if this had been shown on public television. It would have been a lot of bleeps. So, and obviously, Mark, you can answer this question, but Bob and Curt, you can. Was this one of the more intense practices you've seen in the last 2 weeks?
I'll go with yes. I mean, just because we heard Mike Norvell's voice a lot. We heard Alex Atkins getting after guys. We heard Adam Fuller getting after guys, a little bit of JP too. You hear mostly those voices plus Odell. I thought, again, 36 hours after technically a road game, you had to travel. Yep. So, yeah, I mean, they were getting after it today. Full pads, right? I mean,
it wasn't, there weren't a ton of team periods. There wasn't as much team period as they sometimes do. But yeah, I think from a approach to the coach's standpoint, I mean, it's, I was impressed last year through the ups and downs of that season, really only one stretch of downs. I thought they were pretty status quo with how they approached things. I don't think the coaches let the players get too high or let the players get too low. And I think you're seeing already the attention to detail there.
And so let me comment on this. So this speaks to our culture, right? The circumstances are not going to dictate the level of our commitment to get better. And, I remember as a player and as a coach that the most intense practices, the hardest practices were the ones after a win, especially a big win, right? I think the coaches see an opportunity. They know they have an opportunity in front of them with this team, and they're not going to let it pass by. They're not going to sit on their haunches and let it pass by. They're going to get everything they can get out of this team. And that's the way it should be. That's the way it needs to be, right? And, and so, I mean, I remember times, I remember regretting a Tuesday practice after a big win, because we were getting ready to have to go through it because they were not going to allow complacency to set in.
Well, and the practices y'all used to go through on Tuesday were what I call bloody Tuesday practices. I mean, you might as well just have been playing another game in some of those practices. So I'm glad the rules for the NCAA have changed a little bit and about how much contact you could do, because what y'all did sometimes was illegal, or what they did to y'all was sometimes illegal.
Yeah. Statute of limitations.
Yeah.
Right.
But all right, guys. So we are now going to put the Tigers to bed. See you, Brian Kelly. Eat your crow all week, and be glad that Florida State is now off your schedule unless Mr. Sankey extends the invitation to Mr. McCullough, and we end up over there on the SEC West or whatever, how many other divisions they're going to have whenever they get this done. But anyway, hey, listen, we appreciate everybody turning in. We hope you've enjoyed the LSU coverage. We're a bunch of tired guys. I think we're going to we're going to get some rest for tomorrow. And we got to start prepping for Southern Miss, as does the team. But listen, if you're not an Osceola subscriber, please remember that you can go to the Osceola, theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com and subscribe for a new 1-year subscription for $45.24 to score the LSU game by using promo code FSU4524. Please go to theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com. We have our practice report from the day. Kurt's got a story on the offensive line. I don't know what else we have up there. I haven't looked at the site.
Your takeaways are there. Come on. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So I just did my first takeaway Tuesday, which is kind of serious, kind of fun, a little bit of both. But you can check that out. But anyway, we enjoy you. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Please go check us out, theosceola.com. If the only vehicle you use us for is YouTube or Facebook, but we'd love to have you check our writing out as well as what we do with a podcast and video cast. But guys, appreciate y'all taking the time out for another show, and look forward to talking again later in the week, and then obviously post Southern Miss. But everyone have a great night.
Go Noles.
There we go. Mark has officially ended the show.